Oh my God, that was, oof, oof. Okay, so this is the last NV 45 Pro race, and boy oh boy, did we go out with an absolute banger. So, as you guys know, the last few races for this series have been tough. So, not only has it been difficult because I've been racing against excellent racers, guys that are much stronger, much faster than me, but I've also had mechanical issues in between.
Oh no. Come on. Come on.
Shifting.
Yep. No
Dang.
resistance.
Should we wait, Miguel?
No, just keep going, man. Because it's gonna take me at least a minute to reboot my trainer. I'm just trying to get to a flat spot.
Damn.
I'm gonna try and I'll switch into my disc wheels and see how much distance I can make up. Uh, okay, I'm reconnected.
Very stressed out, very demoralizing at times where I just feel like I did not want to continue with this series. Now, this time around, I didn't go for GC. I wasn't worried about GC. Ultimately, because of all the issues that I had and all the perceived failures that I had with the race, I just decided, you know what? I'm just going to race every time I race. Like, it doesn't matter whether it's, with the guys that I normally race with on Monday, or if I race at a different time. I'm just going to race, have fun with it, and truly make the best out of the situation. And so today, me and the guys got in the pen. Now, after doing 10 races, my race score dropped, so that kept me within the 450 to 570 group. And so I let everybody know, hey, I'm going to be in the pen today. For anyone that wants to have some fun, let's make it a good time. And so ultimately, as we got into the pen, I ended up deciding on going with the Athos climbing bike. Now, while it's not a really hilly stage, like I think in the actual documentation, it's only like 190 meters of elevation gain. So for my Athos, it's not really going to do anything. Like, it's not going to help. But ultimately, it will actually just notch off little meters here and there, and that's kind of what I wanted. And so I decided to go with the Athos, knowing that it's going to make me work harder in order to stay with the group on the flats, areas where I'm not really climbing above maybe 3-4%. I'm going to have to work harder. But at the same time, I was like, you know what? It's the last stage. I'm not worried about the final result. I'm just going to ride. And so as we took off, the pen, like that first chunk of people that kind of took off, really took off faster than me. And I was kind of surprised because usually whenever it comes to leaving the pen, I wait till the timer says 0-0 or 0-1, and then I start ramping up my power and speed. I know a lot of people will do it like 10 seconds beforehand. I don't do that because I feel like for me it's a waste of energy because I'm ramping up my power and my speed, and then when I leave the gate, it still kind of feels like I'm going the same speed as everybody else. So I usually wait till the timer says, either 0-0 or 0-1, start ramping up my power, start shifting up in my gears, and then launch. Now, this time around, I did a couple different things, just to rewind a bit. Did a couple different things. So I previously tested out using a pre-workout supplement that, I've used in the past. I feel like it's done well for me. But racing, I never really got a feeling of when I should be using it. When it comes to supplements, timing is everything. When you know how to time it well and you can utilize it effectively, then it's going to work best for you. And so the last few times I've tried it, it's not worked out well. The supplement itself says take 15 minutes before you begin your workout. I was doing that. It was not helping. And it really came down to that first like 15, 20 minutes. It feels like it ramps up my body heat and I feel like I'm on fire. Now, as you guys know, I have the core sensor. That's not actually what's happening. I've seen my body temperature stay the same throughout that whole first 20 minutes. But that's just the perception of what I feel. Maybe there's something else going on. And so I avoided it last few races. This time around, I was like, you know what? Let me try something different. Let me use the pre-workout hour and a half before my race, which is when I start my hydration process. I was like, let me use it then, and let's see how we do today. The other thing I changed was I got a Bluetooth adapter. As you guys know, I've been having lots of issues with my trainer recently, specifically with the resistance basically timing out. Like it just stops functioning. And that's frustrating when you're going full steam and all of a sudden you have no power. Or you have power, but you have no ability to execute on that power. And so I've been going back and forth with Elite for the last handful of days. The best recommendation they gave me was try a different device. You know, try using an iPad, try using an iPhone, something different other than what you're using. As a veteran of the IT industry for many, many years, that answer was frustrating to me because I know that is just well, we don't really know what's going on. You haven't really given us enough information to know what's going on. So this is a quick way to test something that will most likely work. And the reason why it most likely works is because variables change. And when you know that variables are changing, you can then start testing those variables back to back. And so I decided to go through my Zwift logs. I ended up doing a quick Google search, found the Zwift forum where they talk about where the logs are at. Went through the logs for the last 2 incidences that this happened. And what I ended up finding is that I was getting a Windows error around the same time my trainer was losing resistance. And it seemed like something with the Bluetooth adapter was erroring out. Now, it didn't specifically say what it was. And of course, Windows isn't saying what it was. So I just went on a hunch. Bought an adapter. My thought was I looked at the Windows drivers for my Bluetooth adapter as not only the built-in Bluetooth adapter, but it looks like my laptop has a couple different adapters. So I looked at the drivers. The drivers were from 2006 and older. So these are old drivers. And my thought was, my Justo is pretty new. It's a couple years old, but it's pretty new. Maybe it's an incompatibility between Bluetooth versions. Maybe with the newest firmware update, because that's when all this started. Maybe with the newest firmware update, they updated the Bluetooth drivers on their end, and there's an incompatibility there. So I bought a device that's basically brand new, has the newest Bluetooth version, drivers, all that stuff. Tested it out. Felt good. I was like, all right, I'll test it out for the race tonight, see how it goes. I don't want to test it tomorrow because tomorrow's URL, and I don't want to risk having an issue tomorrow for the first time. So I tested it today. And wouldn't you know, not only was my power, my cadence, everything felt instant. When I stopped pedaling, I saw my cadence drop to zero almost immediately. My power dropped to zero almost immediately. When I started pedaling, I saw my power come up, my cadence come up. And going back and forth, seeing that, I was like, all right, this is different. This is a different experience. And so now let's get back to the race. We leave the pen. I see everybody starting to take off. I give what Rough Draft would say, a little bit of a punch. I give a big punch because, Jesus, that guy can ride. 6 watts per kilogram out the gate just to stay on the back of the front group. Now, of course, that ended up pushing me towards the front. I saw Mike and a couple other guys were basically stringing out the front. Mike was basically gone. And when I saw Mike out front, I know Mike has always wanted to do kind of like a breakaway style, race where he just goes off the front and continues going and rides to the sunset. So I was like, you know what? Maybe this is the opportunity to do that. I'm on the Athos. It's a climbing bike. Leaving out the pen, you're basically going straight uphill. So we get out the pen. We start going. I see the front is stretched out. I continue going past the main group, get to the front guys. We've got about a second or so gap, which ends up pushing me off to the very front because I kind of glide through those front guys. And as I glide through, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep pushing. So I kept pushing up the climb. I ended up holding 5 to 6 watts per kilogram up the small ramp coming out of Watopia. And then as we made the right, it was me, Mike, and one other guy. And when I saw that it was the three of us and we had like a 2-3 second gap somewhere around there, maybe 4 seconds, I was like, all right, let's keep going. And I just kept pushing. Mike would end up coming up to the front, push a little bit, and I'd kept pushing past him because ultimately my goal was if I can get Mike separated from everybody else, then I know at some point, which originally my goal was to leave him before the second climb. Because as you know, on this course, we go up the Jarvis KOM, come around, and then we do the hilly KOM. And so my thought was, I'll do my best to stay with them going over Jarvis. And if I can pull Mike away, or if we're already further away, if I can pull Mike away, then I'll basically ITT it on the front, just stay as long as I can on the front, let those guys rest, whoever's there. And then once we get to the hilly KOM, just let them fly. I'll back the power down, I'll let them fly. Now, as we hit the Jarvis KOM, Mike and the other rider starts to pull ahead. I held on a little bit, stayed a second or two off the back, but at the rate I was going, I was like, all right, I'm not going to be able to continue going any harder because while I did feel good, I didn't feel like I could hold the power they were holding because they were moving. And so ultimately what I ended up doing was backing down the power a little bit. A couple other riders started coming up, passing me. And then next thing I know, I was like 10th or 11th place. And I was like, all right, I gotta push. And so as we get over the top of the Jarvis KOM, I see JD pass me. And he kind of stayed with that front group. And ultimately that front group kind of came together. Saw JD pass me, keep going. And I was like, all right, I can at least get on JD's wheel. I know he had a big weekend, a lot of accomplishments in outdoor riding, that thing. And so I was like, if I can at least catch him, he and I can work together and finish the race together, and that'll be good. So I dig one more time, end up leaving the guys that I was with at the moment, catch up to JD, and from that point on, I was like, all right, I know he's had a big weekend. Let me jump on the front. Let me do as much work as I can and just keep pushing. I thought we would end up catching up to the front group again and kind of end up working with them. By the time we got to the bottom of the Jarvis KOM, they were probably already like 20 seconds plus ahead of us. Maybe, let's say 15 to 30 seconds, somewhere in that range. Big range. But they were definitely gone. And so at that point, I'm looking at, he's got a lot of work under his legs. While I'm feeling good and feeling fresh, at the same time, I can't close that gap. Especially, I can't close that gap if I'm gonna try and bring JD with me. And that was the goal at this point. I wasn't gonna leave him behind. I knew that if I could stay off the front, I could pull him as far as I can. But ultimately, we basically ended up settling into a routine where we stayed right in the middle of both packs. And what ended up happening is the front group kept getting further away from us. The group behind us, the second chase group, if you want to call it that, kept getting further behind us. And JD and I were basically stuck in the middle. Stuck in the middle with you. That song. And so we were just, at that point, I realized that, hey, we probably weren't going to bridge that gap. I didn't want to let the second chase group bridge up to us. So I was like, you know what? At this point, we just got to keep our momentum going and not really fall too far behind. At some points, I did think like, maybe we should just back down the power and let that chase group catch us. And then we can kind of, we can work together with them towards the end, save some power and then out sprint them. But I was like, you know what? They're so far back that I didn't want to do that. The guys in front were so far ahead that I didn't want to let them get too much further. And so ultimately we just kept going where we were at. I kept jumping on the front as many times as I can. So that way I can, give JD as much opportunity to stay in my draft as much as possible. At one point I ended up messaging him like, hey, I got a feather. So that way, he knew that when we hit the steepest parts of the climb, I would end up using my feather to help basically keep him in my draft, but also save some energy myself. And so after we get over the hilly KOM, we've got a sizable gap between the secondary chase group. We got a sizable gap between the front group. Mike's doing great. At one point, I'm like yelling at my screen, like, go Mike. I was ready to see him podium. I was ready to see him take the win. but there was a guy on the front that basically just started pulling away and was gone. Like completely just took off and left that small group behind. And so we just kept pushing it ultimately till we got to the end. And as we got to the end, I jumped into JD's live stream, which, by the way, check it out. So you can see from his perspective what the beginning of the race looked like as well. I saw someone in the chat mention like, hey, you can catch this person, the person in front of us, because it was someone like, I think 14 seconds ahead of us. But at that point, we only had about a kilometer or so to go. And when I saw it, I was like, all right, I can bring up my power, bring it up to like 300, 350, kind of do my normal team time trial pulls. Because a kilometer or so to go, that's not that difficult. I feel like we could have bridged that gap. But we were just within that range where by the time we turned the corner to get to Jarvis, that person was basically already done. And so I started backing down the power and knew that, you know what, we did good. Our race was done. We were able to give Mike the opportunity to do what he needed to do to place as high as he could on the stage. We ultimately created that gap between the main Peloton group and the Breakaway group. And we were just kind of stuck in the middle. And so with that being said, ultimately I ended up crossing the line, I think in 9th or 10th place. Again, I wasn't worried about it because I knew that my focus was getting Mike as far off the front as possible. And so again, check out his channel, check out his race so you can see what that was like. Because I know not only did he do excellent, but he also got an FTP increase in that race. So again, check out their videos. We had Jail in there as well. I know we had a couple other guys whose names are just not coming to the top of my head at the moment. But again, I'll do my best to tag everyone who was in there so you can check out their channels and their race experiences. But again, this was one of those series where it really showed and kind of opened up my eyes to not only climbing potential and making smarter decisions when it comes to climbing. Now, the wheels themselves, I will say, they're really good wheels. I don't think they're ideal for very flat stages. But for someone like me who's a decent climber, they make climbing a great experience. They make me feel fast on the climbs. They make me work harder on the flats because even with my fully upgraded SL8, I still have to work hard to stay with some of the faster groups when I have the 4 or 5 pros. But in today's case with the Athos, they worked out perfect on the climbs. Something I definitely recommend, depending on the stage, especially if it's a stage like this where you have, I know a lot of people refer to Jarvis and the Hilly KOM as draftable climbs. I get it. But when you look at the raw numbers, even if you're spending an extra 2 to 3 seconds on the climb because of the disc wheels, but ultimately you're expending an extra 50 to 100 watts just to maintain those 2 to 3 second benefits, it might not be worth it. And so I would really, really, really recommend, really think about when it comes to the stages that you're racing, are the discs truly the right wheels for what you're looking to accomplish? If you've got the power to climb and keep up with the group on the disc wheels, go for it. I know the disc wheels will save you a lot in terms of wattage on the flats. And through rolling courses, kind of like the S's or a lot of the other, flattish Watopia parts, or some of the other worlds like McCurry, where you're not really going to get more than 3%-ish when it comes to the rolling terrain. And then you might get a little spike here and there of 5-6% if you're going on the bridge up to the rooftop KOM. On courses like that, sure, use the disc because you're going to save a lot of energy and you're going to go through those rollers very efficiently. But if you know you got to climb 50, 100 meters, 200 meters of elevation gain, you might want to consider the 4 or 5 pros. You might want to take a second look at how you plan on utilizing the tools you have access to in order to effectuate a different result in the race. Because that's ultimately what happened today. The setup that I had was pure climbing setup. Aethos bike, that's upgraded to, I think, level 3. And the 4 or 5 pros, which are essentially the second fastest wheel set, only second to the Meilensteins. And there's 2 other wheel sets that I know one of them is the Zip 353s, and then there's another wheel set that I can't remember the name of, that all 3 are kind of tied for first place, where the 4 or 5 pros kind of come in second to them. So today was pure climbing. And what I mean by second to them is literally like points, like tenths of a second over an hour. So you're talking about, minor differences in a race like this. And so on a race like today, with a pure climbing setup, my focus was I'm going to hammer these climbs as best I can to really change the dynamics of the race. And that's ultimately what happened. Ended up creating a breakaway initially, and that breakaway ended up breaking away again on the climb, which ultimately led to a gap where the strongest guys could go forward and race their race, and the rest of us just got to enjoy it from a distance. So with that being said, feel free to check out this video that YouTube is going to recommend. Feel free to check out any of the channels that I've linked below. And again, you'll see, so YouTube's released a new feature where you can add people that you've collaborated with on these videos. So when you see my icon, you'll also see JD and others next to it as well that I raced with. And so go ahead and check out their channels if you haven't already. And I will catch you guys in the next race. Cheers.